So you want to fly a jet? I've flown them a little bit, but I've got a client here that just moved out of an M600 into a jet, and I'm excited to hear this story. I'm also excited to bring back one of our best clients ever, Don Kukla. Don, welcome to the Malibu Guru podcast.
Thanks, Joe. And you are too kind, but it's been a great relationship I've had with you over the years.
It has been wonderful. You know, one of my earliest memories of you, if that's the right way to say it, you came to me early, and we were in Jacksonville
right.
at our old office there, and you came to me, and I said something about a customer, and you said, Joe, we don't have customers. We have clients.
That's right.
And I was like, you're right. We don't have a customer because a client has a...
Well, you have a relationship with a client. You sell something to a customer.
That's right.
And you want a relationship.
I want a relationship. Everything we do here, I want to have the relationship aspect to it. And you were one of the guys that zoomed in on our verbal so that it was in keeping with what we were really trying to do. Which we want to, there's a good book out there called Thou Shalt Prosper.
Okay.
It's by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. I listened to a little bit of it this morning. It was kind of fun. And he talks about how if you chase profits, you'll never hit the end of it, number one, and everybody will figure that out real quick, and no one wants to deal with somebody that's just chasing profits. But if you chase service, if you chase relationship, if you chase I have a skill, a service, and ability, and we help you with that, the dollars always follow.
Right.
And it's just a good mindset. He talks about when you help a client, they'll give you a certificate of appreciation, which is a dollar bill or a big dollar bill or something. And that's always followed me along. But that's basically one of the things you were giving me good wisdom and advice on.
Well, I'm glad somebody's listening, but doing the right thing at the end of the day is what it's all about. And when I first found you, it was really just you, and you've done a tremendous job building an organization and the culture around it. You can really tell when you talk to the people who are here.
It's just a barrel of fun. I tell my team all the time, we're nothing but thoroughbreds. There better not be a donkey in the room.
Right.
And so when we hire somebody, everybody gets to weigh in on it. We have multiple interviews because we want nothing but thoroughbreds. And that has been our if there's been a thing that's helped us out, is that if you deal with somebody at Casey Aviation, you'll find out really quick you're going to deal with thoroughbreds. You're not going to deal with donkeys.
Yeah, I think you got that here.
And I got a stable full of thoroughbreds, and that's been the secret to the whole thing. So it's just been a barrel of fun. But we also have a lot of great clients, of which you're one of them. And you've been a client for a long time. When did you first buy a Meridian?
In 2017, I bought a 2001 Meridian, and you really helped me sort through Meridian, Matrix, Mirage, Malibu, whatever. And we finally made a good decision. And we bought one that we had to rip out the panel and put a new one in, which was great.
Yeah.
I had come off a Cirrus SR22 at the G1000. And actually that retrofitted panel was a whole lot better actually than the G1000 in my opinion.
It was. Yeah, you put a G500 or a G500 TXI.
We just missed the TXI. It was just a few months early.
Yeah, that dates it. I mean, today you put a G500 TXI with a G750, the EIS, the GFC 600 autopilot. You put all that into a Meridian. You've got a whale of an airplane, a whale of a panel. I mean, just honestly, and I'm going to reach a little far here, I think I'd rather have that panel than a G3000 panel that's in an M600.
I don't think it's too far of a reach with the touch screens on the GTN, and it was very, very intuitive. I really liked it. Integrated
nicely. You have things like in that, if you have that nice of a panel, it's not part of the airplane, meaning that it's a and I use the word hodgepodge, doesn't sound right, but in other words, you'd rip out the whole panel and put in these, the 500 TXI, the 750i, blah, blah, all these different things, and you end up with this non-integrated panel. I'd rather have that anyway, because when there's something new that comes out, you get it.
Right, like you can pop it in very easily.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. In the G3000, which is in an M600 or an M700, you don't get Safe Glide.
Right.
But Safe Glide is part of the newest, latest, and greatest things that are out there. And so if you buy a Meridian, an old Meridian, you put all these stuff into the panel, the greatest avionics out there, which today is Garmin, bar none. Garmin wins the award today. I hope somebody's going to chase them down and be a great competitor to Garmin. I hope somebody does. But today, Garmin's kicking everybody's behind. And if you do that, you end up with this panel that's a brand new M700 from the factory in Vero Beach does not have SafeGlide. Now, it's got some other things with it, like auto throttles and SLS, which are great. There's nothing wrong with those things. But if you have an engine out, I'd rather be in a Meridian with SafeGlide than I'd rather be in a G3000 figuring it out.
I tell you, I honestly wish they would sell the Fury without autopilot if you wanted it that way.
Yes. If you could buy an M700 and pick your retrofitted panel,
Right.
forget the G3000, put in this panel, a G500 TXI, 750i, EIS, all the different, good autopilot, all that kind of stuff. Man, that'd be a sweet.
Yeah.
Now, you probably wouldn't get SLS, and that's the thing. And
But I don't actually want that.
yeah, to me, SLS is, or Autoland is the other way to say it. No, we've been out now 4 years on 5 different airplanes, and there's not been one time that anybody's pushed that button and saved a life. It truly is a solution looking for a problem. The
Right.
first time somebody pushes that button and saves a life, well, number one, the first time that happens, it's going to be worth it because you saved a life.
Sure.
You saved a life. I'm thrilled. But it's more gadgetry and really fancy, great stuff that comes with that high technology. Not that technology is out saving lives today.
Yeah, and it probably gets more people in a plane who might not
That's right.
otherwise, which is a good thing.
It's a good thing. I'm not dogging it from a standpoint that it's not worthy and it's not acceptable. I'm saying there's other technologies that do more, but from an outside of aviation perspective of that panel, the Autoland is much more flash and bang and show than what you actually gain from it. I tell people it's like a potty in a King Air. No one uses the potty in a King Air, but it's there, and that gives
Right.
you gobs of comfort.
Right.
No one uses the potty in a King. If we have a King Air and we tell them it's $1,000 potty fee, because no one wants to go grab that bucket out of the
Right.
back of the thing and dump it out. No one uses the potty in a King Air, but the potty's there,
Right.
and it gives you just a mountain of comfort. It's the same thing with SLS. SLS gives people comfort.
Sure. It's like the parachute in the Cirrus.
Yeah, what's interesting is that Cirrus just recently did come out with, they have SLS in a Cirrus and they have Autoland in a Cirrus.
In the SR22.
In the SR22, meaning that if you have a pilot incapacitation, okay, then you can push the button, Autoland, and it'll take you to the plane. If you have an engine failure, Autoland's not going to do you any good.
Right.
Then you can pull the parachute.
Right.
So if you have a pilot incapacitation problem, you got SLS to help you. If you've got an engine failure, you've got the parachute,
Right.
You got BRS system, ballistic recovery system to save you. That's an all-encompassing airplane.
Sure.
And I think that technology eventually will come to us. I think Piper will eventually have to, but today they don't. And today you don't need the engine failure plan because you bought an airplane with 2 engines. But I'll get ahead. Let's go back to where you were, because you had a Meridian for a good fair number of years, and then you decided to sell that and buy an M600.
Yeah. So we bought the Meridian in 2017, and then COVID happened. And I actually went with a gut feeling when COVID first came out. Prices of private aviation planes went down because nobody thought they could go anywhere. And so demand was low, relatively speaking. And I thought that would be an opportunity to trade up. I liked the idea of the M600 from the standpoint of I like Garmin. So for me, that's always is going to be a requirement on any plane that I buy, that it's a Garmin just because I'm getting older and I don't want to have to relearn it.
Yeah, exactly. Going from, when you're moving up to the next airplane and you have the same avionics type. In other words, when you moved from the Garmin panel, meaning the G500, G750, and then you went to the M600, that wasn't a big move for you.
Mm-hmm. And neither was going from the Cirrus G1000 to the retrofitted panel. All the buttons do the same kinds of things. You might have to reach in a different direction,
right?
But it's all there.
And the logic is the same. It's all the same. And so you got to figure out where that button's at, but that button is going to do about the same thing, and the logic's about the same. So it's an easy upgrade. So when you move to something like a G3000 and an M600, for you had to learn a few more horsepower, 100 more horsepower, higher gross weight, wider landing gear, G3000.
I like the extra payload, whether it's fuel or people.
Yep.
That was the big deal for me. Yep. And I loved it. It was a great plane. And to be honest with you, as I looked around, if I'm thinking about turbine, range, all that kind of payload, economically, I really like that M600 without the Autoland, because that's $1 million item, right? And
correct.
So
that's right.
So if you don't have the Autoland and you look at the pricing of an M600, I don't know how many of them there are like that, but I had number 49, and that's a sweet spot.
It's a sweet. I tell you, I will say it. If you go back in time in the PA-46, the early Continental airplanes, like 84 to 88, and especially the 86.5 to 88, everybody loves those because you get Parker Hannifin gear, you get electric flaps, you get a robust airplane, Continental engine, and you got the efficiency king. And in other words, if you own an 86.5 to 88 Malibu and you lose money, you're really doing something wrong, because everybody wants that airplane. It's so efficient, goes so far. I mean, it's got a 1,500 plus nautical mile range. It'll fly in 8 hours, at normal cruise. I mean, it's just amazing what that airplane will do. And everybody wants that particular airplane. It's the cream puff of that genre, if you want to think of it. If you want a piston airplane, that's a really good place to go. To me, if you go 20 years ahead, 10 years ahead, and you go to 2035, that almost sounds funny to say it, but if you go to 2035 and you look back, I think the 2016 to the 2019 M600 is going to be the sweet spot airplane. Yep. I think that's going to be the low maintenance, cheaper acquisition, efficiency, turbine efficiency, that airplane that you can actually load up 5 people, bring bags, full fuel. If you live in the central, in the central part of the U.S., you can hit anywhere in the continental United States. It's a real airplane. Mm-hmm. It's just a real airplane. That's all there was to it. And you had bought an M600, flew it for how long?
Bought it in 2020, and then I just sold it a couple months ago.
Yeah. So almost 5 years.
Yeah.
You and that M600 became one?
Yes.
I mean, it was the airplane that you would take just about
everywhere. I mean, I took it to Nova Scotia. I met you up in Alaska to do some training.
That's right.
I went down to Cabo, and I've been to the Turks and Caicos. So that's sort of my envelope, and everywhere in between.
And if you wanted to go further than that, you could.
No problem.
I mean, it's an airplane you literally could take anywhere and go anywhere. What's your usual mission? You mentioned those right there, but what's your normal bread and butter?
Well, I think about 10% of my time is training, 30% of my time is probably business, and the 60% is pleasure. And pleasure can take us anywhere. I've got a daughter that lives in Dallas. I live in St. Louis. So that's a normal flight that we'll do a few times a year. I get up to Chicago. I've got probably more plane even now than I really need. But really from Denver to the west, and then the East Coast to the east, going down to Florida. We'll occasionally, maybe once a year, get out to the West Coast, but that's not the norm.
Right. You came to me, I don't know, I'm going to guess 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times over the last 3 years, where you and I, either on the phone via email or in person during recurrent training
Sure.
of some sort, where you basically said, I want to move up to a jet. I'm thinking about a jet. I've got this in my mind to be able to, or to move up to the next thing faster. Whether it was, I'm going to carry 4 people and 4 golf clubs and go to a cool golf course somewhere, or I want to go further, or I want to go faster. I just want to fly a jet. I mean, and we talked about the ins and outs and all this. And my basic scenario on this has always been, knock it out if you want to spend some money.
Right. That's a true statement.
Okay. So you have now moved up. You decided, hey, I'm moving up to a jet. What jet did you decide upon?
I ended up with a Citation Mustang.
Now, why did you go for that Mustang? Why the Mustang? Oh, because there's a bunch of other airplanes. You did your homework. On this.
Sure.
You looked at CJ3 pluses. You looked at old Citations. You looked probably at a Phenom 100.
Right. Why the Mustang?
Talk about your thought process as you approach this. I'm gonna go from an M600 to a jet. Why
the Mustang?
Why the Mustang?
So you're right. I did think about, well, first, obviously I wanted it to be a single pilot. I didn't want to have to always have, a co-pilot. I don't have anything against that, but I just didn't want that to be a restriction in how I use the plane.
Right.
So that eliminated a bunch of things. So then you kind of start, and then I also didn't want to have a ton of money tied up in an aircraft. This is a want to have. This is not a need or a must have kind of. Any of these planes are for me.
Yeah,
right.
Even the M600. At the end of the day, can you live without an M600?
Sure.
The answer is you can.
Yeah.
Now, I will say you can't live as good. I mean, if you want to fly yourself in the world, it's your personal airplane, get around wherever you need to go. You're going to have a hard time beating the efficiency and the range and the payload and all the whole package of an M600.
There's no question about that. And someday I may come back to that.
And yeah, okay, we'll talk.
You never know.
You never know. Yeah, you could have bought an M700 too.
Yep.
Meaning that was probably on the block of hey.
Yeah. So if you look at the single engine turbines, I didn't feel like there was enough bang for the extra buck that you had to pay for it. In other words, if you said a TBM 9 series or a Eclipse or even the Fury, they're all nice things. They do go faster, but you're going to pay a lot to get, in my opinion, a little out of it.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that, but it was like, why move from, again, this nice, efficient M600?
Yeah. And for your M600, a 20
was a 2020.
20? No,
no, it was a 2017 that I bought in 2020.
Yeah. So your 2017 to move from that to a Fury probably would have cost you another $1.5 million.
At least.
Yeah. And you would have gone.
I would have picked up a little speed.
25 knots, 30 knots,
right.
Maybe. If you would have gone for a TBM 930, you probably would have spent $2.5 million more.
Right.
And you would have picked up 55 knots.
Right.
But no bigger cabin, no more load carrying capability. You're right. The bang for the buck for $2.5 million is just not there. It just
other than if you wanted a new plane. I mean,
correct.
Other than that,
we talked for a while about a King Air. I will tell you, I love King Airs. I just think King Airs are wonderful. You didn't pick a King Air.
No, a King Air. When I think about that, I just think about more people and more stuff that you can carry.
That's right.
No question about it. And there's always that rule: buy a plane that covers 90% of your missions. And I rarely need to carry more than a couple of people, right? And so a King Air would be nice, but I'd be, again...
for 90% of your missions where there's 2-3 people inside there, it felt like you're just carrying a lot of metal around for
nothing. For an experience that is not going to be a whole lot different than what I was having, right? It's not going to go a whole lot higher. It's not going to go a whole lot faster. I can just carry a bunch of stuff, and I get the experience of twin engines. But again, it wasn't different enough to say I should go that route.
Right. So the King Air got pushed off to the side, sadly for me. Not just because I like King Airs. I think they're great. Right. I did my best to talk you into a King Air, but it didn't happen. So that brings you back to a jet.
Yeah. So to me, the the jet was different enough that it was clearly going to be a different experience. There are actually some trade-offs that aren't as good. One is cost. The cost to buy is actually less than the M600.
Really?
Oh yeah, I spent about $400,000 less for the Citation Mustang.
You can buy a lot of fuel for 400,000.
That's right.
So your all-in expenditures have gone down. Your operational costs have gone up.
Correct.
But you're going faster.
I'm going faster. So I used to fly the well, it's really been very consistent, a couple hundred hours a year in, the Cirrus and the Meridian and the M600. If I do the same missions, I'm only going to be flying 150 hours a year because of the speed difference. But you're still feeding two engines and covering two engines. You're going to go a lot faster. A lot is, the Mustang in the world of jets is a slow jet. Right. My true air speeds are in the 340 to 350 range. So it's a whole lot different than the 260 to 270 that I was in.
Yeah, you're 90 knots faster. That is, you notice the difference when you do across country.
Yeah. And yet my numbers aren't, the cruise speed and climb speeds are a whole lot better, but my takeoff speed's about the same. My landing speed's about the same. So it's not like I have to figure out all this new speed stuff from a operational standpoint. It's very, very easy to fly. I would actually say this is the easiest plane that I've ever flown is the Mustang.
Even going back to a Cirrus SR-22?
Absolutely. It's just smooth. It's quiet. You have the power there. And Simple. It's just a whole lot of fun.
Simple operate. Okay,
yes, good. Yes. I'm back to a G1000. So I just had to figure out some of my knobs again, but all the visual looks the same. I looked at a Phenom 100.
Yeah.
And that has the Garmin 1000 in it. So that would have been about the same. I keep hearing about certain inspections that are very costly in that aircraft. And I wasn't hanging around Phenom people. So that probably had some influence on me. And I was hanging around Citation people.
Right.
And so sure, they're going to be brand loyal to some degree.
Yeah.
I did look at the CJ series, the older ones, again, you could get a retrofitted CJ, might go a little faster, might hold a little bit more, didn't have FADEC engines. So the Mustang does. So that's one less thing I have to think about. I can just push the throttle to take off and not have to worry about an overspeed or anything like that.
Right. And the FADEC actually works.
Oh my gosh. You have 3 detents. It's cruise, climb, and takeoff. And that's it.
That's it. It's like you said, a very, very simple airplane to fly.
Yes.
Okay. So all this, the need for the Garmin, the need for the increased speed, the jet part of it, the tube. Is it big enough? I mean, you still have 6 seats, right?
I have 6 seats. The whole plane is 11 feet longer than the M600. I'm guessing that 4 of those feet are inside the plane, and the other 7 are outside the plane. The tail, kind of sweeps back a little bit further. In the M600, when I took 3 guys golfing, I would have to put down one of the back seats to stack the golf clubs in.
Right.
I'd actually end up having to put down one of the middle seats to stack luggage. And so you felt like your stuff was infringing on your space.
Right.
In the Mustang, I can carry 320 pounds in the nose, and it fits golf clubs in the nose or the tail, and another 300 pounds in the tail. So inside the plane is just the people.
Right.
Your stuff isn't there.
Big difference. And easy access. In other words, the access to that nose baggage and that tail baggage is
super easy.
Super easy, not a problem. Cakewalk to get. If you want to load up a bunch of stuff into a back seat or not the back seat, but the back aft baggage compartment of an M600, you're laying a seat down. You're bringing that into the cabin. It's getting involved in what you.
It works, but it's just a different feeling.
It's a different feeling for sure.
I took some people from work up to Chicago last week, and when we got back, I said, and it's somebody who has sat in the right seat with me. We flew from Seattle to St. Louis in the M600 nonstop in 5 hours and 10 minutes. And so he had that experience, and now he was sitting in the back of the Mustang. And I said, "What'd you think?" He goes, "I could have been on any plane. I could have been on a Southwest Airlines plane. It was so nice back there." He goes, "Which is kind of nice, but then I kind of missed being involved with you a little bit up front. One of the things the Mustang doesn't have is headphones for the people in the back.
Yeah, no intercom system.
No. So, they can move around. They can come up and tap you on the shoulder. You can go turn your head and talk to them, but it's different than
really know what's going on all the time.
Yep.
And when you flew your M600, everybody had a headset on.
Yep.
You're all talking, everybody's intercomming.
And there's some fun to that, which I kind of miss.
Absolutely. It's interesting. We have a King Air that the owner had a intercom in the back of the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And then he sold that airplane, bought another King Air. And we found out it's $12,000 to install an intercom in the back of that King Air, just a 4-place intercom.
Right.
And at $12,000, like, well, why would I do that? Because I don't really need to talk. I mean,
right.
I can sit in the back. Well, he's about to write the check for $12,000 because he wants that experience right there.
Right.
That feeling like I'm part of what's going on. I hear the radio talk. Your passengers like,
right.
There's a place where you just feel like you're involved.
Well, it almost feels like with the Mustang or any jet like that, it's like I'm the pilot and I have paid passengers, so to speak, in the back, even though they're your friends or whatever. But you almost have that disconnect, right? And there was a nice connection in the PA-46 world that you had that group experience.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, when you moved from the M600 up, there were some roadblocks. First off, you didn't have a multi-engine rating.
No, I did have that rating.
Okay.
So at one of the PMOPA conventions, Travis Holland had donated a type rate or a multi-engine rating course as one of the auction items. And I was thinking, you know what? You never know when I might want to fly a twin. So I'm going to buy that thing. And he had the course was in a Diamond DA62, which is a plane that I had flown once before, and it was kind of fun. And I thought, oh, this would be great. This is the kind of twin that I would like to fly potentially someday and just have more time in the Diamond.
And G1000.
And a G1000. So I bought the package and flew myself up to Bellingham, Washington, and spent, I don't remember what it was, 5-6 days, something like that, flying around the DA62. And
in a professional environment.
Yes.
Meaning it wasn't just like go to your flight school and get this. The whole idea behind it is you're about to make the next step up to the next bigger airplane. They're going to treat you like that.
Yeah. And, I think along the way, back to your point about us having conversations, things just kept happening in my aviation career, checking boxes that weren't necessarily deliberately intending on flying a jet, but they just sort of happened. It's, for instance, when I did my training with you in the Meridian, you said, "Hey, Don, you've got 80% of the stuff done to get your commercial. Why don't you just finish it off?" And so we did. And then this twin engine experience happened. So I did it. And even all the other stuff, the stall spin training, I had an experience in a Game Bird, which was incredible. And I would recommend that. That's another story for another day, maybe, but I would recommend that to every pilot.
No. This is a story for today. What I mean by that is the key to you need to be advancing in ratings. You need to be advancing in experience, not because you're going to use that experience tomorrow, meaning the next day. You were prepared for this move because you made the decisions early in the game that got you closer to when you made the leap. It wasn't a leap of faith. It was a leap that you could actually make the leap from. You moved up to the commercial. You moved up to the multi-engine. You had a bunch of experience in other airplanes. So when it came time for you to make the jump from an M600 up to the jet,
the jump wasn't as big.
That's right. It wasn't that. It's likened to. I've heard this analogy in a lot of different ways. But what the analogy basically is, you got to get into a boat and get out of the harbor and get into the ocean, because that's where boats operate, is out of the ocean. But if you're on a pier, you don't want to make a flying leap, run off the end of the pier to try to jump into the boat, because you might miss the boat.
Right.
And now you're in the water and bad things happen. But the closer you can pull that boat to the pier, then it's just stepping into the boat. And now you're in the boat. And if it's a big enough boat, you can go out in the deep water and go catch big fish, is the idea behind. You basically drew that jet closer to you with every decision of more hours, more turbine hours. Like even your early decision to not buy a piston Mirage and go for a turbine was putting turbine hours in your back pocket. So when it came time for you to become a jet pilot, you had some turbine hours under your belt.
Well, that turned out to be a huge benefit from a number of perspectives. One, from an insurance perspective, my insurance cost on the Mustang is almost identical to the M600. And that was not a problem at all. And I expect it might go down once I have actual experience in the plane.
Right.
And then the guys who sat with me in the right seat during my supervised hours in the Mustang, I said, do you do this kind of thing very often? They said, he goes, well, I used to, but, there's a lot of people I wouldn't want to be sitting in the right seat with. And I said, well, what do you think about me? Being a little selfish. But he said, well, when I saw your turbine time, I knew that this was not just some guy who had this fantasy about flying a jet. I didn't deliberately do all those things with the expectation of flying a jet. They just sort of happened because I have a growth mindset and I'm always trying to learn more stuff.
That's right.
I don't know what's going to be next, but I'm sure something's going to be next.
It wasn't like you woke up one day, sold your business, had a payday and said, I think I'm going to buy a jet.
Right.
And, too much money for the decisions you're making. We see that in different scales with some of our clients that they're not ready for this step they're about to make. You made a bunch of decisions early in the game that set you up, that drew that boat closer to the pier. So when you did make that jump from the pier to the boat, in this case, a jet, it wasn't an unrealistic jump. It was one that honestly wasn't that hard for you.
True.
There's things that happened along the way, but it wasn't a big. And I think if there's a takeaway from this, if somebody listened to this podcast, I will tell you, Don has exemplified. I've watched it happen since you and I have been friends and clients since 2017. I've watched you every year go for something bigger, better, learn something more, become the better pilot. I will say that we've even talked about you becoming a commercial co-pilot, meaning in your local area to be able to fly, to go get that experience, fly with some other people. It wasn't like you needed the co-pilot money.
Right.
That's not it.
No, it's just the experience.
Just the experience
Absolutely.
of learning more, being able to be out there in the marketplace and doing good stuff. I think that's one of the secrets. If you're listening to this podcast, it takes more than money to go fly a jet. It takes a longer road of getting better, bettering yourself along the way.
Well, one of those experiences was being able to sit in the right seat with, I'll call it my equivalent to Joe in the Mustang.
There's a Mustang Joe?
Yeah, kind of. And he let me go, his client who owned the plane, and he flies them back and forth to West Virginia, allowed me to go sit with them right seat on one of those trips. And that trip was sort of the nail in the coffin in terms of me making this decision, because I knew I could do it. I watched what was happening. I had the feel for it. And I'm like, I know I can do this. I know I have to be trained yet, but I know that I can do this.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. Okay. So you looked at a bunch of different airplanes, basically settled in on the Mustang. What did you decide from that point? How did you get a broker?
So Corey is the guy I work with up in St. Louis, and Corey's a guy who owns Gateway Jets, and they managed a dozen planes, and a bunch of them are CJs. And so he was the guy who helped me. I said, all right, let's go do this. And he was the one who helped me find the plane. All of this, all of a sudden, once I said yes, everything happened a lot faster than I anticipated, both buying the plane and selling my plane.
Well, let's talk about that, because selling your airplane, I hate to say, was quite easy because number one, there's three things you need to have a great transaction. You need a good buyer, you need a good seller, and you need a good airplane.
Right.
You got those three. You got a good buyer, good seller, good airplane. It goes fantastic. Everybody loves it. It sells quick. It's a beautiful thing. You don't have any one of those, and you probably don't have anything good happening. You got a good seller in your case. It was you, and we knew that. we have a good airplane because you're going to treat an airplane right.
Right.
All we had to do was find a good buyer. That's easy to do with an M600 that's of high quality, low time, looks great, it's been babied and cared for. The care and feeding of your M600 was outstanding its entire life. And so when it came time for this, I mean, I hate to say it, it wasn't real long, and we had your airplane sold.
No, it was actually in annual up at Des Moines Flight Service, and I was expecting to fly it down here for you to shine it up and put out market material. And while it was up there, you said you had somebody interested, and then it happened.
And it happened. And I will say, again, good airplane, good buyer, good seller, and assuming in that good seller is a good price. And what I mean by that is not that you're giving the airplane away. It's not a wholesale sale. It merely means that you put the airplane up for what is the right price to be able to sell an airplane. And you did, and the airplane sold so fast it was ridiculous,
Yep.
and it was great. Thank you for considering us, or not considering us, for using us to be able to sell your airplane.
Sure.
And the guy that helped you buy the jet did a good job.
Yep. He did a good job.
He found you a good airplane.
He found a good one out in Portland, and we had the pre-buy done out there, and everything went great. We flew out there commercial and flew it back to St. Louis together. And I didn't even have my type rating yet. So that's what I mean by things happen a lot faster than I expected. But that's okay. It worked out great.
Yeah. Okay, so now you have an airplane, but you can't fly it.
Right.
You got to get trained. Can you say where you got trained at?
Sure. I went to flight safety in Wichita.
Okay.
And it's all simulator school. I had never been in a sim before because when we did the Meridian and the M600, the insurance company allowed me to come to you.
And we did in-aircraft training?
In aircraft training. Flight safety was about a 16-day program that, you got to take that time out of your life to go and do it because it's all right in a row.
And you can't come get 3 days and then go to work and then get 3 more. It's 16 days in a row.
And you had 2 Sundays off. That was it. And I didn't have a plane, so I wasn't going back and forth between there and home. But I did meet up with Maria one weekend in Kansas City. But beside that, it was very intense. I would tell you that it was probably the most rigorous training that I've had in aviation, just because it was very intense for that many days in a row.
Yes.
You had ground school for 5 or 6 days, and then you have a 50-question test to pass, and then you get in the simulator. And the way I feel about most training is I think it's fairly easy to fly a plane. And so maybe your training is 30 or 40%. Here's how you fly the plane. And the rest is here's what you do when bad things happen.
Right.
And figuring out the emergencies. Well, it felt more like 99%. What do you do in emergencies when I'm out at flight safety? Because most of the time we were flying around at night with,
with a broke airplane of some sort.
Well, one engine, with
everything was single engine.
And then clouds down to minimums or even lower where you couldn't see and you had to do go around. So, the sim was incredibly realistic from the standpoint of you are sitting at the actual seat in just like my Mustang right now.
It's a level D sim.
Yeah.
And what do I know?
Full motion.
And when we say level D sim, there's different categories of simulators. Everything in the PA-46 world is what we call an AATD, Advanced Aviation Training Device. And honestly, it costs about $350,000. The panel's not going to be like your own airplane. The control feels terrible. The visuals are horrible. It's got motion, but it's not the real motion. They break down a lot. It's just, we have looked closely at buying a simulator at KC Aviation over the years, many, 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 many times. And every time we simply got to the place where we don't believe in AATD training because you can't do complete training in that airplane. You can't do landings. You can't do emergency procedures that interact with the ground. None of that stuff is realistic because the control feels not right. Really what those AATD is what it says, and it's an advanced aviation training device. And what that means is it's good for procedural training It's good for instrument training, for that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you got to get it in a real airplane. With a level D sim, we're talking about a $35 million simulator, not a $350,000.
Right.
A $35 million simulator that's been flight tested. The control fields feel exactly the same as in the real airplane. The inside of the airplane is identical to your airplane. There's not like, oh, well, this one has auto throttles and that one doesn't, or this one has the thing. The panel is identical to your airplane. The control feels the same. You can teach takeoffs and landings. The visuals are much, much, much better. Am I speaking this correctly?
Oh, absolutely. And when you think about the PA-46 world, as you said, there's so many different models with so many different panels. It would be hard to have that all line up exactly what you're going to see. But in the Mustang world, they're all the same. I mean, there's 475 or whatever of them. And other than some being NXI and some not, for those who got the upgrade, other than that, there's really not any options or differences. And so
that's right.
It's very easy to create that environment.
And you can spend $35 million doing so because there's a return on investment that comes to that, because you got a 16-day course that you're going to spend how much money on?
22 grand.
There you go. So you're going to stroke a check for 22 grand to go to initial training for this thing. And in other words, the point is it's big money. Actually, if you go up in an airplane, the money gets even way crazy. I mean, you go look at a Citation Latitude type rating, or one of these big jets type
Phenom 300.
Phenom 300 type ratings, $50K.
Right.
I mean, the big money, because you have a level D sim that's flight tested, that's exactly like the airplane. We simply don't have that in the PA-46 world. It will never be in the PA-46 world because we don't have $35 million to spread between what's required, but all the clients that are going to fly that particular airplane. And so you end up in the Mustang world where you really do have a simulator, and the experience in the simulator was
intense. Again, flying around, literally it was at night all the time. And I said, well, why do you do that? Why don't you ever turn the lights on, so to speak? And they say, well, it's easier to see runway lights and things like that. And they really want you to get used to those kind of more emergency situations. And
make your hand and eye go to the right switch without having all the lights, to know that switch is there and be able to get your hand to go to it.
Yeah. On my check ride, the last thing that I had to do was a no flaps landing in VMC. And I was so elated to just know that I could relax basically at that point in time, because my problem was no flaps, and that was going to be it. And so I landed at JFK or something like that, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah, everything's at JFK. I wrote an article about how all the simulators use JFK. I don't know why they do that, but the big runways, easy to do circle and approaches, I think. But yeah. And also, if I say this right, when you go for a type rating, and if you fly a jet, anything over 12,500 pounds or a jet, you can be a jet below 12,000, but you're going to get a type rating. This is a real chance to fail. And what I mean by that is, if you don't do good enough at, Meridian training, and the instructor just simply goes, I'm not going to sign you off for that. We're going to do some more training, and you get to do some more training because he or she feels like you're not good enough yet. You mess up a type rating and you fail a check ride. There's a type rating with an examiner that's examining you. It's a chance to fail when you're going for a type rating.
Oh, and I took advantage of that chance. I had a hard time with a V1 cut, and a V1 cut is you lose an engine where you're beyond the speed at which to abort the takeoff, and you got to take off. And we're not doing those kinds of things in a single engine plane, and so that was the part that was more foreign to me. And I just had a hard time trying to identify which way am I headed and what do I need to do to fix it. I knew it was all about the rudder, and I kind of kept my head too much inside the plane when that happened, as opposed to outside the plane. And if I had when I look outside, it's very easy to tell which way the nose is going and which rudder to push. And once I figure that out, once you get the rudder down, even on one engine, the thing flies great. It's got plenty of power, but you got to get it straight and level, and then you're fine.
Then you're fine. And the V1 cut I give a lot of check rides in King Air airplanes and in Embraer 120 airplanes. I'm a DPE for that, so I get to give those type ratings. And we do them in the real airplane where you cannot do a V1 cut. You have to wait till 400 feet and then you get to do it. If you do your check ride in a simulator, you do your training in a simulator, it happens at V1 is takeoff decision speed.
Right.
After V1, we're continuing.
You're gonna fly.
You're gonna keep going flying. Anything happens before V1, we're gonna close the power levers, close the throttles, and stay on the runway. And basically, you get V1 plus a knot.
Right.
And that's when the simulator operator is going to kill that engine.
Yes.
And it's a worst case scenario because you got a lot of torque, basically, or asymmetrical thrust that's happening that is causing the airplane to want to yaw. And you're going to figure out which one of your feet needs.
Yes. And I thought I expected there to be less extreme torque because the engines are right on the fuselage, where like in the King Air, they're out on the wing, and I thought that distance apart would create more of the yaw than. Mm-hmm. But there's so much thrust going on with the jet engines that you still get it.
Oh yeah, and it's absolutely critical that you handle this correctly, because if you do it wrong, airplane's going to flip upside down. You're going to crash and kill everybody.
Right.
On board the airplane, plus whoever. The FAA is very serious. They don't call it a V1 cut. The V1 cut is kind of a simulator-ism.
Jargon.
It's sort of the jargon, here comes your V1 cut. But it's the single engine failure after on takeoff, I think, is the procedure. But it happens right after V1. And literally the ACS, the Aircrew certification standards for, you're going for your ATP, or not, you're going for your type rating, which is to ATP standards. Right. And the FAA basically says it happens right after V1. So you get this, it's a worst case scenario, and you got to handle it right.
So I ended up, 16 days wasn't enough for me. So I came back for an extra day.
You wanted some more time in Phoenix.
That's right. An extra day in the sim. And all we did was, V1 cut stuff for a couple hours. And then the next day I redid the check ride.
A re-ride.
And fortunately, I didn't have to do the whole ride again. I just had to kind of pick up where we had left off and clean it up, and it was fine. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I tell people all the time, people that fail a check ride, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get back on the horse and go figure out what you didn't know and go do it again. You're proof positive that you can fail a check ride, and you're fine. Yeah, there's a hit.
It's a little chink in the armor, but other than that, it's fine.
But at the end of the day, no one. It's not going to be a thing for you. So you went to training, spent a bunch of money, stayed there a little longer than you wanted to, but eventually got your type rating. And let me ask this, because a type rating is to ATP standards.
Correct.
Even if you're affixing that to your private license, for you're affixed that to your commercial license.
Correct.
What was it like to fly to ATP standards?
Just, you got to be on the game. You got to be on the ball on these numbers and make sure you stay within those tighter ranges.
Yes.
But that, I kind of like that. I kind of like that challenge.
The challenge of that. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that didn't scare you. It kind of excited you. Maybe,
exactly.
Hey, I'm going for a type rating, but a type rating is a real deal. It is. There's an opportunity to fail. It's a check ride. You don't get that in the PA-46 world. It's a different feel as you approach this check ride.
So many people have said that your first type rating is the toughest because it's a new experience. You're not used to it. And I could see that if I went back to get a different CJ or something like that rating, I would at least understand what's going to come at me, and you get through it a little bit easier.
Yep. Okay, now you own a jet.
Yep.
Now you have a type rating. You still can't fly the thing by yourself.
Correct.
You got to get what they call mentor time.
Correct.
Now, PA-46 pilots know a little bit about this, because oftentimes an insurance company will come down and say, you need and you need insurance approved training plus so many hours of mentor time. You got some mentor time. How many hours did you have to get?
They call it SOE, Supervised Operational Experience.
There you go.
And so I had to have a type-rated Mustang pilot in the right seat. The FAA said I needed 25 hours because all of my type rating experience was in a sim, not in a real plane.
Right.
And then the insurance company kicked on an extra 5 hours. So I had 30 hours.
Okay. And 30 hours meant that you're going to find the Joe Casey in the Mustang world. You found that person, and they basically get to ride around with you.
That's right.
And you're doing everything. You're on the controls. But what's it like flying with that person? Is the pressure off or the pressure on?
It certainly is different than just being on your own, but it was good. I think they're all, these guys that I was with, as 3 different people. They're all CFIs. They're all there to help you. A couple of times they read the checklists for me, and I thought, wow, this is sort of nice having a co-pilot that's doing something. But most of the time they're just, kind of watching, and we're chatting, and it's fun. And they were all great guys.
Good people. I was going to say good people.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't, but you also got to do some real missions, meaning you need the 30 hours of SOE time, mentor pilot time. But you could bring your family, you could bring your business clients, you could go do stuff. They could be operational missions. They're just with somebody else.
That's right. I tried to at least have a purpose for each one of the flights. I took one of my partners out to Phoenix and visited some friends out there. We were there, stopped in Denver and had lunch with my sister. I took some folks up to Chicago, dropped them off. Then we flew around someplace else. And then my last loop, stopped at an air park in Tennessee that I wanted to just check out. And then we ended up going up to Roanoke, where I went to some airports that I knew I was going to be going to later this year, get my eyes on them with a new vehicle, and stopped in Sarasota and back then to St. Louis. So it was great.
All right. I got 2 questions for you. There is that person out there that resonates with your experience.
Mm-hmm.
There's that person out there that's going, I want to fly a jet too. The colloquialism is they got jet fever.
Right.
Yeah, I got jet fever, and the person that goes, all right, I want to do what Don did. Here's the question: is it worth it?
Absolutely. If you're a cost conscious person, it's a bigger check that you're going to write to operate, and you have to be comfortable with that. You have to just put that, your annual budget in your head, and it is what it is, and you can either afford it or not. And if you can, and you really want to do it, go do it.
Right.
But did I need a jet? No. Would my life have been totally fine keeping that M600? Absolutely. That accomplished 80 to 90% of my missions. This is just a little bit selfish, and the fun factor level is way high.
Yes. And here's the next question. What's the best part about flying the jet? Is it the takeoff roll where you're advancing the throttle? Is it the climb rate as you're coming up? Is it that you're climbing at a faster speed? Is it that you're cruising at 4 something?
It's hard to put your finger on any one of those things because it's the whole package. And there's a huge sense of accomplishment that somebody told me, if there's this many people in the world and how many people are pilots, it gets much more narrow, and how many people are jet pilots and how many people are single pilot jet pilots, that universe gets pretty small. Really small. And so there's a huge sense of accomplishment just to have gotten to that level. But this is still pretty new for me, right? My flight here to see you was my first flight by myself. It all went well. It all went great. And, I have a picture of the screen. It wasn't this flight, but for the first time that I hit flight level 400.
Right.
It's kind of exciting. But did I need to do this? I didn't have to do this, but I wanted to do this.
Right. And it's worth it.
And it's worth it.
And you would do it again, knowing what you know today, right now.
Yep.
I mean, if I could snap my fingers and you go back to an M600 in the hangar, you would not.
Not
today.
Yet. Not today, because it's still very exciting and it's still new. I'm still learning, and as long as I keep learning something, I'm good. In my mind, I said this is a 5-year deal. It could be longer.
Yep.
But in my mind, I've got it sort of budgeted mentally and financially for a 5-year deal.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens after that.
That's right. And so the point is, there may be a day you're back in the PA-46 world.
Absolutely.
Because if you're counting your chips, it's a cheaper airplane to fly, and it does a great job, does a bunch of good stuff.
And I don't know at some point, what happens with insurance and aging process. I'm 64 now, so 5 years gets me to 69.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Who knows? But, by then, if I fly 150 hours a year, I'll have 750, 800 hours in the plane, and that's a whole different deal.
And you never know what's going to be available and out there at that time. But I can tell you this, when you are the single pilot jet of a multi-engine jet, and you got 800 hours in your logbook of that, I don't care what airplane you go to. It doesn't matter. I'll have
a good profile.
You'll have a very good profile. The insurance companies will smile upon your wanting to go in that. In other words, you'll have all the boxes checked, and you'll be able to go wherever it is you want to go. If there's a thing, because you might say, there are better jets in the world. Citation 3 Plus keeps coming to my mind. Single pilot, a lot more range, a lot more capability, a lot faster, But do you need to go there? You never know. Will you ever come back? Well, I don't know. I hope you do, but it's not from a position of, I hope you come out of the jet. It's from a position of, it's just fun to fly with you every year. It's always.
Well, I am a lifetime member of the PMOPA, and I'm still on the board, so I'm still hanging around.
What would be just a barrel of fun is if you show up to the convention in September with your jet.
I'll probably be there.
If so, we're going to park an M600 right next to it, and we're going to get some pictures and all that. Matter of fact, what would be cool is if we can get your old M600.
Yeah.
If it'll be there, and park the two next to each other, and I could see some cool stuff happening here.
See, I think people are wired as either savers or spenders, generally speaking. I think there are different degrees of that, but every person is wired one way or another. And I definitely am more of a saver. I think of things being from an economic standpoint. And this was a step out of my comfort zone.
Was this hard for you?
I still had to get over. I'm not saying I definitely can afford it. I wouldn't have done it otherwise, but I had to get over the fact that it was going to cost X dollars a year to operate this thing, and I'm doing it just because I want to do it, not because I have to do it.
If you took zeros off the end of the equation and you said, I'm going to have, filet mignon instead of a hot dog.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel bad about it. It doesn't even cross my mind.
Right.
We're going for the filet mignon.
Right.
With my money today, I don't feel bad about that at all. I like a filet mignon. It's there. It's good. It's clearly a better cut of meat than a hot dog. I just don't even think about it. I just go do it. And you start adding zeros onto the end of it. It's the same process. If you'd asked me about, can I eat filet mignon once a week, 20 years ago, I couldn't have dreamed, I'm saying that. Well, I would have thought, no, that's not good, not right, not whatever, whatever the case may be. Cause I didn't, if you're in a place where you can fly a jet and the numbers don't scare you and you've advanced yourself to a place where you can, knock yourself out, have a great time.
Somebody's tagline is life is short, fly a jet.
That's right.
And I embrace that.
There's I've been fairly open about my heart event, which today is mid-May. I got a little notification from the FAA saying that I should have some kind of response by early June. So I should have my medical back pretty soon. But you know what I have missed more than anything is not flying the Big King Air or doing the examinations, because I can't do DPE work while I don't have a medical. I'm still able to instruct, and I've been doing a lot of instruction. The thing I have missed by far the most of all is just the ability to jump in whatever little airplane I want to jump into I got a 182 and I got a Bonanza, and I even have a Porterfield. And I'm planning to fly my Porterfield to Oshkosh this year. I'm hoping to.
Is that the little red one?
Yeah, the little red.
I've been up the
little red tail wheel airplane. Yeah, I've been thinking I'm going to take that to Oshkosh. But just like right now, I can't go jump in my little airplane by myself and go flying in that airplane because I don't have that. There's an asset I own that I can't go fly, and the drives are driving me completely insane. As far as I got to drive to Dallas. Oh my gosh, it's 3.5 hours, and it could be an hour, and it just, I've entered into this new place. I think you've entered into a new place too, where going 340 knots at 410 or whatever, a bunch of weather along the way. I mean, there's something to be said about being at 410 over the thunderstorm as you cross.
It's pretty amazing.
Yes, I mean, it's a thing that is so good.
Well, your time has just shrunk even more, right? I mean, when you drive, it takes so many hours. When you fly, you cut it down. You fly faster and faster and faster. And now it's 90 minutes for me to go to Dallas from St. Louis.
Right. And one last question: what does Maria think about all this?
Maria is
the sweet and nice and practical. She comes to a lot of the PMOPA events. She's been around. It's been fun to hang around Maria and get to know y'all, both of you. Yeah. What does she think about you from running around? What does she think about you flying around a jet, and what does she think about the jet?
Well, she thinks, first of all, she is the most supportive, sweetest wife I could have. I don't deserve it, but
I was going to say you went over your skis.
Right, that's right.
I was trying to come up with a golf.
Married up. Let's say.
Married up. You did, yeah. I was trying to think of a golf analogy because you outputted your. I don't know what the right word is. Anyway, you did real good.
No, she is very supportive of me chasing my hobbies. When she knew back when I started to fly, she knew that I wanted to fly someday. But I literally came home from a trip with a friend, and I kind of ran out of excuses as to why I shouldn't fly. And I said, honey, next week I'm starting flight school. And she goes, oh, okay. And she is more than a willing participant in the flying with me. But I think if you pressed her and said, do you really want to do this? She'd say, well, I don't know, But she's very cool with it, and she'll enjoy going places and all those kinds of things with me. So
yeah, she's enjoying flying in the jet now.
Yeah. And she'll be. We haven't flown in the jet together yet, but I'm sure she'll be in the right seat just like she was.
I was going to ask you, is she going to be in the front or in the back?
No, she'll be in the front, and we'll teach her how to read checklists, and she'll be my co-pilot, and it'll be wonderful. But it's great.
Yeah. Well, you too can fly a jet if you've got enough money and the time and the wherewithal, and you've made decisions that are going to be able to let you progress from A to Z. And you could be like Don and move from that M600 up to a jet. It's possible. It's doable. It's not for everybody, but it is something out there that you should strive for if you can. And I'm very proud of Don. Don, thank you a bunch for coming on the Malibu Guru podcast, talking to our crowd about moving from an M600 to a jet. And it's good to hear you doing so well.
Well, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. This is my third podcast with you, and they're always fun. And just to throw it out, if anybody wants to talk to me, like if they're trying to figure it out or whatever, I'm more than happy to be a resource and talk about the steps I went through and things they should be thinking about.
Yeah, I don't want to give out your number or your email on the podcast here, but if you contact me,
yeah, sure,
I'll link them up with you. So if you're interested in getting firsthand knowledge of moving up to a jet and what's it cost, what's it take, what's all the different things, Don's just a wealth of information and a great guy to talk with. You've done a lot of that kind of work with people that are moving from Meridian to M600 and now M600 to the jet. I think you're going to get a lot of phone calls. I hope so.
Happy to do it.
I love, at Casey Aviation, we love helping people go where they want to go. And once you know where you want to go, we whatever it is, we want to help. And it's been fun watching you go along the way. You've always been a guy with an upward trajectory.
Yep.
And I'm anxious to see where.
We'll keep it that way.
I'm anxious to see where that goes. Hard to go higher than 41,000.
That's right.
I bet you can figure it out. So, all right, Joe Casey and
Don Kukla.
signing off.